Greetings, friends, wherever you may be, on the other side of the monitor, anywhere in our beloved, polluted, and unique spacecraft. And as you know, why I am sitting down is because we have guests, and today it's plural, and we have some guests. I will introduce both of them. Sadly, it will not be enough, but after that we'll be able to listen to them and will give us food for thought in this very important program that we want you to pay attention to. Wilma Reveron, co-president and secretary of Foreign Affairs of the independent movement Dossier of Puerto Rico. She's a lawyer with a great practice with human rights and family rights. She is part of the Board of Advisors of American Civil Liberties Unit, ACLU of Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico National Chapter. This is National Chapter of the country of Puerto Rico, as well as the College of Lawyers of Puerto Rico. She's worked many times with the United Nations for the freedom of political prisoners of Puerto Rico as well as dependents for this country. This is, of course, values we share with her. And Gerardo Fernandez Noroña, I'm sorry. Sorry about mistaking the name. It's not the first time we've met. And this is the reason why sometimes aircrafts crash, but you know, things happen. Rodolfo Fernandez Noroña. Once again, sorry. Today, I'm not doing things right. The last name is Noroña. Mexico, March 1996, Mexican politician, former member and founder of the Democratic Revolution, where he was the Secretary of Communications while the spokesman. Thus, he was well known for his statements and his protests, specifically after the elections of 2006. He was a congressman with the Working Party of the 11th District of the Federation of the Federal District of Mexico, working in Iztapalapa, during 2009 up to 2012, and he was the third congressman with the greatest number of interventions in the tribunals. On April 2015, directing the independence movement of Mexico, a beautiful acronym. It's ANIMO. He was a congressman candidate for the Working Party, PT, and he had a national campaign calling for votes and supporting the candidates of PT. His campaign was focused on touring the fourth circumscription for which he was the candidate, and he was part of the Puebla, Morelos, Guerrero, and Tlaxcala, as well as the Federal District of Mexico. As of now, Noroña has stated that he will provide support to Andrés Manuel López Obrador for the President of the Republic, and he was named the coordinator of the Morena organization of the 4th District in Iztapalapa, and as part of the proposals for PT 21. This is just a brief introduction where I am not being fair with all the things that you've done, working for fair causes and fighting against those who are not fair. But now, let's listen to the lady. What are we standing on today? Well, first of all, Walter, greetings to you and to everyone who's watching the show tonight. I am delighted to be here once again, and because Walter is always part of the fight for the independence of Puerto Rico and making this clear for everyone. We're lacking this in other parts. We are here as part of the meeting supporting the Bolivarian Revolution. We, of course, we're also remembering the 5 years of the death of Hugo Chávez Frías, commander. And this is a very crucial moment for Latin America. Latin America today is going through a period where there's been an increase, a dramatic increase of the military intervention of the United States in this continent. And we are back seeing once again the symptoms. What happened after the Condor operation, the dark and evil hand of the School of the Americas, that even though they changed the name to Institution of Security of the Western Hemisphere, is still the School of the Americas that trains soldiers and police officers for torture and repression. And of course, we are shocked that between 2012 and 2016, over 9,000 soldiers and police officers of Latin America have attended the School of the Americas for their training. Of course, gringos are experts with euphemisms. They often say that this is just an institution in order to respond in cases of humanitarian emergencies or natural disasters. But what they are doing is training these 9,000 people for them to be members when an intervention is required for this type of situations. So they are older Boy Scouts, of course, but we all know about the history of the School of the Americas, and we are particularly shocked that over 51% of the soldiers and police officers come from Colombia, and there's still an important war against the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela that takes place with the trainings that have taken place since 2017. They call this Amazon 2017. They call this Freedom 2 as well. And this is nothing but the roadmap for the South Command for aggression against Venezuela, as well as creating a base. They call this a logistic base in the triple border between Colombia, Brazil, and Peru, where they have stated that no soldiers will be left, but there's going to be weapons and fuel in the case of any needs that could come up. And this has happened in just 1 year, Walter. Just 1 year. And it is shocking for us not to find more information and more claims from the progressive forces of Latin America about this situation in the continent. It is clear that traitor Santander is still part of this, but we are no longer surprised by anything. And our dear friend, please tell me, how do we open fire tonight? Good evening, Walter. Good evening, everyone in the room. When talking about this, the last time that I visited Venezuela, we had an event that was in charge of President Maduro after the earthquake of September 19th in the city of Mexico that entailed a lot of damage in the city. And they say that whenever there's a problem with citizenship, the DN13 is the one who saved the people. The people save the people. We have pictures of people heroically saving other people. The people of Mexico trying, helping, people giving each other hands to do anything, while the army was doing exactly the opposite. But now when we speak about drug trafficking and security measures, whenever they speak about security, Mexico has seen the army for 11 years. I said jail, but I was wrong, although some of them should be in jail. Well, in the case of Mexico, there are a lot of problems with people that are on the streets from the army. And in December, there was a law for interior security. That's another element. Besides the training in the School of the Americas, there's pressure of our countries to approve legislations that have a situation under the context of security are able to use the army against our protests by stating that they are against the public peace. So it's not only the traffickers. The United States don't do anything about this. They don't care about this as public health. They don't decrease their consumption. They are the greatest consumers of drugs in the world. They don't speak about the banking account, the wealth, the distribution network. They never disable this in the state because the drug trafficking money is part of the reproduction of the capital. But then we have all these offenses against our countries. And this is of course terrible. And in the case of Venezuela, it is really terrible because not only a military threat, no, with their usual hypocrisy, always say they are worried about the famine in Venezuela. And then they lead to worse things in Venezuela, with economic blocking, with harassment, by stating that this is a threat to American security. Yes, and here we've seen that there's over 6 million Colombians living here who have free education and health, as well as job and things they don't have in their own nation. But these stereotypes are not the ones that they usually sell with their media. No, it's really sad to see what's happening with the government of Colombia, just like with the government of Mexico and Peru, to this spur point against Venezuela. The Mexican Secretary of Foreign Affairs demanded to have clean and transparent elections in Mexico. And I said, well, in Mexico, where the elections have been stolen in 2012 and 88 and other years. And I said, whoa, do you really can say this? Well, this has happened here, let me tell you. 6 times this has happened here. And Jimmy Carter said, we've seen over 90 elections in many parts of the world, and we can say the electoral system of Venezuela is the best in the world, as stated by this president. And no one will ever say that it's a socialist government or that's part of Castro and communism. And I always speak about this. I'm not speaking about this from my point of view. I'm speaking about what Carter said. This is the best electoral system in the world. And if I said that they should have in Mexico the same electoral system that they have in Venezuela, they would kill me in Mexico. We have elections on July 1st. We're going to win with López Obrador. But we can open a very important and different path for the humanity in Mexico. And this could be very useful against all the harassment that can be seen in Venezuela. But we are always facing the same fraud, that in the 21st century the vote is not respected in Mexico. And this is tragic. This is tragic. It's just as bad as not respecting the independence of Puerto Rico. So they are brutal things that are not acknowledged. It's not acceptable not to acknowledge the independence of Puerto Rico or acknowledge our elections. It's really terrible. There's a strategic analysis. There's the alliance between the greatest vendor of drugs in the world, which is Colombia, with the greatest consumer, which is the United States, of course. And we've said that if this link is cut down, millions of people will go crazy due to withdrawal syndrome. And Puerto Rico is one of the main bridges connecting the transit of drugs. And in Puerto Rico, customs happen as they would in the United States. But once the drugs are in Puerto Rico, they are under the jurisdiction of America. Yeah, so they can be, of course, distributed to the continent. So this, about security and drug trafficking, Puerto Ricans, just like Mexicans, we are the ones who provide the debt, while they take our money. They take the money of selling weapons, of selling drugs too. And we are the ones who suffer the social problem in our country of our young people being addicted to drugs. And it's really calling our attention the fact that the United States are creating sanctions over Venezuela and the stating that a given person is part of drug trafficking, when the drug traffickers are themselves. We can always remember the anecdote of the Bolivian president Evo Morales, who, when he became a president, saw that there was an office for the North American subject within the presidential palace. And he asked, what is this person doing here? And they said, well, this is the link with the DEA. But he said, the DEA is the one protecting drug trafficking in Bolivia. Please take this person away from the palace. He cannot be here. Do this immediately. And this has been the history of both Mexico and Puerto Rico. The agencies of the American government who should be working with the prevention of drug trafficking are the partners of drug traffickers. And this is documented by the son of Pablo Escobar in the books he's written. So, as stated by our dear guest, about the way in which the army of the United States that is, and I quote, providing aid and support for cases as the earthquake in Mexico, as well as the hurricanes Irma and Maria in Puerto Rico. The American army took almost 3 weeks to get to Puerto Rico. And when they get there, they always do terrible, terrible work. The same thing happened with the engineers of the United States that were the main responsible agent of reestablishing energy, which was completely turned down after Hurricane Maria. It's very difficult to recall a situation that was as worse as this happened in the Caribbean as the one with hurricane. Well, in my house, I was 3 months without power in my house. When I flew from Puerto Rico to here, you could see that the core of the mountain is dark. And we have a Puerto Rican astronaut called Acaba. And he is the one showing the images from the NASA. And you can see that the island is still dark. So it's an island without electricity, without drinking water, because many of the water pumps depend, of course, of electricity. And now people are drinking water from the rivers, they are washing their clothes in the rivers, and this is the situation we're still facing in a significant part of our country, with no access to food. Walter, you are aware about how many people died due to this hurricane? 1,500 people. 1,500 people. And the States and the police of Puerto Rico have done everything that is unspeakable to cover this up. But a group of journalists that is committed in Puerto Rico is called the Center for Research Journalism. They carried out the first investigation and they showed this. And then CNN came to the island. And when the CNN came and the news became important in the United States, now they are hiring a university in the United States for them to check how many people actually died in Puerto Rico due to Hurricane Maria in Puerto Rico. But this is an estimate, 1,500 people. People that died because they didn't have access to dialysis machines, oxygen machines. They were not able to have surgery when they needed it. They did not have any medical services for them. And now constantly there are traffic accidents because there are no lights in the intersections. The older people fell, and often because they did not have any light, they fell, and now they have injuries due to this. So it's a humanitarian crisis that sadly, has not been seen, mainly against our Latin American brothers. Well, it's a lack of information as well, because solidarity between Latins is always there. It's always there. But there was an interest for this to be kept aside, because this is a direct responsibility of the United States, isn't it? Yes, of course, they come to Venezuela to help, right? To whoever requires humanitarian help. So if they need to invade, they are here in 3 minutes, and they take over everything. And after they've taken the oil, and after they've taken everything from the country, they create a condition that's what they want, to create a colony, and they have not been able to do so. Here, the opposition, after participating with the different agreements, and before signing them, they just go back due to pressure of the states. The campaigns in our countries, Mexico, sorry about speaking once again about the elections. Well, we are really concerned about the elections. Of course, your opinion is needed. Well, they scare people by exaggerating and creating ideas, and they say that López Obrador will be the one that will change Mexico and bring it to Venezuela. And these are all due to this pressures, due to the double standards of the United States. Well, that's the country with the greatest number of elections throughout the planet. Yes, of course, and they are going once again to election. And the right wing is trying to postpone the elections from April to May, and they were able to do so. They had a fraud in Honduras, they had a coup, and nothing happened, and there's repression to people. Almagro is not saying anything, no one is saying anything, Aguirre Garay is not saying anything, the president of Peru, Kuczynski, whatever his name is, and Santos in Colombia. So they are only lackeys. And the information that we got about the training of the American armies in the United States, 51% of the 9,000 people come from Colombia. Mexico was not sending anyone. Now we have 136 people. And this is incredible because this army was created in the revolution. As this program has such a great audience, I would like to request the support of the Latin American people to get information about how the media are working with the information of the electoral process in Mexico, because at least the people from Ecuador and from Honduras, yesterday I was listening and reading some messages stating that he is not going to win, that things are going to go bad as it happens in Venezuela. So what's going to happen is that once again they're headed for electoral fraud. Once again, they have tried to change the left wing. We have to change the geopolitical map. Well, in this case, they are under a grave state of being mistaken. We, in the 21st century, we can have a meeting without violence, and people are really concerned. 80% of the Mexican people live in condition of poverty. 80%. I thought 90%, and everyone was just looking at me. But now, the UNAM carried out a study, and 80% of the people, there are 16 Mexicans that have $143 billion. 143. Carlos Slim, who was the wealthiest man on earth, now it's said that he's the fifth. I don't believe this. Of course, he's the first one, and he's one of the 6 people who have over half of the wealth created by the whole of the humanity. And this is a regime that we need to change. Yes, this is heaven sent, of course. It's not only the concentration of wealth and social justice, but as you said, our polluted aircraft. They kill flora, they kill the fauna, they kill people, they pollute the air, they pollute the water. This is a collective suicide, and of course we need to change the road for humanity. Of course we need to do this. We cannot have this person as president. This book is called Fuego y Furia. I had never seen this before. Please a close-up to this, director, to the book of our guest. Fuego y Furia. This means fire and fury. Who's the author? Michael Wolff. Michael Wolff wrote this. And he was for 100 days in Trump's administration. He shows what Trump actually is. He's never read a book. He is always enraged. He always makes decisions without thinking. He is always doing the same thing, just having people listening to him. Well, he's the alpha male who's willing to go over everything and everyone. He's authoritarian, he is opinionated, he only listens to the American media after all the manipulation they have. He's immoral. He lacks moral. I don't know. But this cannot be the way. This is a very dangerous person. If you read this book, you will be shocked. Because we are in this person's hand, and this is the real face of the empire. Because this is the real face. Obama was the kind face. This one doesn't care about appearances. He doesn't care about appearances. He will just say whatever he thinks. But, well, they're clearly irresponsible. They put peace at threat, world peace. With the little stability that we have, they are taking things from countries, and we need to change this. We need to create a new path for humanity where no one has to suffer due to economic reasons, and the creation of wealth should not be the only thing. To live in harmony with the world and the planet should be the all. This is the challenge of all the men and the women who are looking for a different path, for a different way. And let me say this again. I share my solidarity with Venezuela. This is very important because no one forgives Venezuela for being sovereign, for being independent, for having all, and for not granting it to the United States. They're not forgiven just because they want to build a different way with all the difficulties that this has. But people like Trump or Capriles here, well, his history. I don't know who now they're creating. Here, the old companies from the United States, until they start with nationalistic spirit, they managed this as if it was their backyard. They had a different country. They had their countries, they had their golf fields. It was completely different, and they were, of course, against the country they were exploiting. And today, they have shared contracts, and they're winning. Well, if they wouldn't win, they would have gone. And this is not enough. They want this for free. My grandma used to say, you want it for free. You want it for free. And this is the problem. They say in Mexico that Russians are going to get all the oil. Well, there's an expression called el petate del muerto. Petate is a material where people used to sleep. This is a kind of fabric that comes from a plant. They used to use this both to sleep and also to bury people. So petate is what they use. Yeah. So they say here that you kill the tiger and you're afraid of ladder, right? So this is a reality. We're facing many important challenges. I believe that we are against the most important offense of neoliberalism right now. I was speaking with some people from Chile that came to this encounters that Chile was the first laboratory of experimenting with neoliberalism. And I correct them. I said this is not right. In 1952, when the Constitution of the Puerto Rican state was created, we added an article in the Constitution that stated that whenever the state does not have enough resources to pay for the expenses of the government, then they'll have to prioritize the payment of public debt. And they gave a constitutional rank to public debt. This was in 1952, before the Chicago Boys. So this was already being developed since the 50s. And Puerto Rico, we're speaking about Korean War, right? Of course, of course. Puerto Rico has been the laboratory of all the neoliberal experiments. Now, we have the final attack, because Puerto Rico, at some point, with the aid after World War II, because the economic politics were, well, it came from Roosevelt with the New Deal, and we had to live with this until the end of the 60s, and there was an economic improvement in Puerto Rico, and a middle class started coming up. And since the 70s, when the oil prices came down in Puerto Rico, they had brought what is called the refineries, oil refineries, as the greatest source to get income for Puerto Rico, for the island. And this is where we started seeing how the window of the Caribbean started crumbling. Puerto Rico was always used to be against Cuba, while stating that in Cuba communism was going to finish the economy and their country. Puerto Rico was shown as the better capitalistic option by studying, see how we're developing the middle class here, how we're improving life quality. There was a system for public education. I come from this public school program. I'm proud of this. There was also a health system, and they worked. And we started the 70s with their privatization. The first one happened with our friend, Carlos Slim, who bought Telefónica of Puerto Rico. He bought the whole of Telefónica in Puerto Rico. Well, it was not Telefónica, it was the phone company. This is all the property of Carlos Slim. And then with the excuse of the Hurricane Maria, and with the need of restructuring all the electrical system of the country, now there is a new legislation to privatize energy as well. They've closed down 300 schools, and now they're about to create a plan for charter schools and APPs. APPs are over 300 public schools have closed down in Puerto Rico. Yes, and they plan to continue doing so. And what's the system of the charter schools? Well, charter schools happen like this. A public company comes to the island, they create an educational consortium, and they create a contract with the Department of Education of the government of Puerto Rico, and by this, they manage this school. And then religious institutions come to the country, to a country where the Constitution ensures the separation between the state and the church, because this is one of the ways for you to evade this prohibition of the Constitution with this contract of these charter schools, because this will be managed maybe by a religious organization, and of course, organizations that will have a philosophy that comes from capitalism, with religious fundamentalism and against all the rights of the LGBTIQ communities, that will discriminate everyone, that the people that are accepted or not in the schools. So those who are part of communities with more money will have better schools than the ones who face a disadvantaged situation of their economy. So there's a difference in education. And this was already stated then in Constitution by the former Supreme Court of Puerto Rico. The Constitution states that the state cannot fund religious activities. And in education, in order to give the people some ticket for them to bring their children to schools that are part of the different religious institutions of Puerto Rico, that's their plan. This was named unconstitutional once. But what happened back then? Well, the Supreme Court of Puerto Rico was under the control of the Popular Democratic Party. Now they're under the control of the New Progressive Party, whose governor is the son of the one who created this between 92 and 2000. This was deemed unconstitutional, but they have the majority in the Supreme Court of our island. So they persevere with this idea. Yes. And this is one of the main characteristics that you can see in this sector that's part of the great interest of the oligarchy of the United States. They answer to the United States and to the multinational companies of the United States. They are the pit bulls. The pit bulls. When they bite, they don't let go. And they haven't lost a single second after Hurricane Maria and to try to bring, I don't know if you heard about this, Walter, there was a scandal with Whitefish Corporation. Yes. They had contracted this company for the electric system to be restored. They had only 2 employees, no history, no experience, and they looked for $300 million. And the company came from a little town in Montana. And Mike Pence, Vice President of the United States, come from this little town. And of course, this was a huge scandal with the President of the United States. And the director of the Electric Authority had to present, had to go because of this. So it was an invented company. Yes. So we are facing the Wall Street philosophy. People in Wall Street say, I will use the phrase in English, when there's blood in the streets, it's the time to buy. When there's blood in the street, it's the time to buy. And this is the economic policy the United States is creating in Puerto Rico today. Listen, so there's trafficking, of course, and this is a free associated state. This is a euphemism for the colony that it is for the United States. But this is how politics work in all our countries. They are independent sovereign, theoretically, but this is really dangerous. In Mexico, they do the exact same thing, privatization of public education, because an important point of view to complement what you're saying is that the money for education comes from the people, and this is given to individuals, not only for religious groups. There are churches that are the ones who are part of the schools. So, yes, a non-religious state is part of the Constitution in the United States. But this is not only the schools, also water, also prisons. Privatizing water is something we cannot think about this. It's criminal. It's criminal. We were able, well, this is my initiative when I was a congressman. You should be honored by this. Please explain. This is a human right. Water is a human right. There should not be any business about water. And this is stated by law, but no one respects this. And they have reached a level where the higher courts, in the case of Mexico, the Supreme Court of Justice of our nation, determines that illegal laws against the Constitution could be legal, The monetization law in December, it was approved, and it is against the possibility of creating protests, of not being arrested without a judicial order, and other things that are established by our Constitution. And I'm sure the Supreme Court of Justice of Mexico will state that this law is valid, even though it violates the constitutional framework of our country, Mexico. So they make business with everything. Mexico has given up ports, airports, telecommunications, oil, everything. Everything has given to the foreign capital. Everything is part of the people. The most important industries, Pemex, I have shared this here, was the 39th company in the world. And between 2000 and 2012, can you please repeat the number? $780 billion. Just imagine, if you multiply this number times 20, which is the exchange rate of dollars against the Mexican peso, then your phone will go crazy because it's just too many figures. It happens like it happened with Trump. It will just go crazy. So this is just too much money, and it was given to the foreign capital. The producer of electricity was also given to the foreign capital. What number? This is the 491st company of the world. So, Pemex was 39, 190 was Telmex, that was the company of the people of Mexico, and after this, Carlos Slim became the wealthiest man in the world. Telmex is a lower company than the one of Mexican oil. So these are the wealth of our country that's granted to the foreign capital. So when they speak about this, they go to states, and then they're the traitor. And Maduro is called a dictator because he wants to work with his people. Besides the mistakes, besides the problems of Venezuela, I can say to the Venezuelan people that you are heroes. You are heroes. Your conditions have been very tough. The last term has been very tough. We know about this. We know about the pain and the suffering in Venezuela with all this harassment of the United States. And I can say something. Venezuela, hold on, Mexico will continue. So, if we're able to do the electoral things right, and the same thing has happened with Chavez, we can do with López Obrador, there will be a geopolitical change. Yes, a very, very important one. Mexico has not been managed well. It has been managed by the traitors to the people. And this, even though it's the 13th economy of the world, Mexico is a giant country. And people don't know about this because our dignity has been always violent, and people believe that Mexico is a minor country, and it's not. When we were coming here, we were speaking about the importance that Mexico has had in the culture of all Latin America in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, and still, today, we are overwhelmed by the American culture, and even though Mexico holds on, Mexico in their deep heart, because we have a very strong cultural root. And just like in Venezuela, like the people, but for the people, and Arreaza spoke about this, and also the president of the Assembly, of the Constituent Assembly, and President Maduro, of course, they are working with the people. Yes, and you need to bat for the people. Yes, we need this, because in Mexico, the border is the antidote. That's the symbol. Yes. And it's been shameful how we became lackeys to the government of the States, because together with the government of Peru and Colombia, and Argentina too, they have a great song of Argentina against Macri. It's great. I don't know the name. It's something like Mauricio Macri motherfucker. Sorry about the words, but that's how they sing. And they sing this in bars, in theaters, in the football fields. And they are always singing this everywhere. Yes, and then people said Macri has nothing to do with this. We are offended because they use a word like son of a bitch. So the prostitute said that they had nothing to do with that. So they are the people with their creativity, with their way of inventing, and with the ways of showing how they're not happy with the government. But we need to go forward and to make a better way, and to create the greater nation, and to free all the strength of our people, to create conditions for us to live as free women and men, and for no one to live with lack of money, right? And our goal is to find this. Venezuela has done a lot, and this is to, I know I'm asking a lot, but please continue. Continue with this. Because if you continue with your endeavor, you will be big. And Mexico must continue. We have created a lot of work looking for our independence, and we need to give them a hand to all the people, to all our countries. Yes, and you have broken the stereotype, because we thought that Puerto Rico was just a partner for the states and nothing happened. But no, a lot of things are happening. Yes, everything's happening. 120 years of fight and resistance. Today, Minister Villegas, we were listening to him, and he had a beautiful, beautiful presentation about López Rivera and about how Oscar López Rivera was able to resist 35 years in jail, 10 of them with sensual privation. And you could see that his heart was where his mouth is. And sometimes the main message that we need to take home from this meeting is that we are just one nation. America is a single nation, Latin America and the Caribbean. And what's happening with the militarization of the whole continent, it's happening so fast during the last 4 or 5 years. This is all a part of one major plan that's going to affect all of us in the same way. Listen, Trump and the militarization of the police of each one of the countries, and now at the same time, there's all the neoliberal offense, all the attack by taking away all work rights, taking away all this, and also approving repressive laws, because in Puerto Rico, after all this that has happened, they have created new laws that criminalize protesting, that deem a grave crime if you go into a public institution of the Associated Free State of Puerto Rico, and if you protest, there's a sitting, and this is, the sitting is a crime that can take you to jail. And they're creating a legislation in order to make a crime whenever you speak ill about the government. I don't believe that this will be approved, but they continue with this, with all these attacks. But at the same time, in Argentina, the Senate voted to allow the American army to go into the Argentine territory. Only 2 Congress women, both of them women, I'm proud about this, were opposed to this legislation. Just in the back of the chamber and saying no. And this was really the only thing that rescued the dignity that happened in Argentina. And all this attack of neoliberalism, for instance, Puerto Rico, the airport is owned by Aerostar, which is a Mexican company, as well as the company that owns the telephones were also invaded by the transnational capital, not only the Mexican capital, because it has no nation, it knows no nation. And the roads belong to a Spanish company. And this is how things, little by little, as described by my friend, everything has been privatized. But this is not happening only in Puerto Rico and Mexico and Chile. The whole continent, because they are coming here for everything. They are going to sack everything that they have not sacked in the last 200 years. They want to do it now. And that's why it is important for us, as Latin Americans and Caribbeans, to educate each other about everything that's happening, to share information, and particularly to become a united strength against this attack. And this should be the goal of all the progressive forces of Latin America. And if they're against Venezuela today, we should all be with Venezuela. And if tomorrow they attack Mexico, we should be together with Mexico. If López Obrador, Mexico are the ones that will build the wall because they don't want Americans to come their way, right? Because whatever will come from America to Mexico will be terrible. If they have been bad with what's happening in Venezuela and Puerto Rico, if the progressive forces of Mexico win, then the attack of the empire in the border will be brutal. Yes, of course, it will be very, very tough. It's very important, as you said. Yes, of course, you were being ironic about this, of course. But I am saying that regardless of your irony, there should be no war. Because we need to lend a hand to the American people. They're also looking for something. We need to think about the great nation. But it's not only that. The whole world is being harassed because they also go to the Middle East, they go to Asia, they're in Afghanistan and in Iraq and they're in Syria. They're everywhere. They just know no borders. Capitalism is suicidal. People should acknowledge that capitalism is suicidal. We are straight to the end of the world. Because they're killing everything, fauna, flora, people, they're polluting the air, the water, they're killing populations. But they are facing the same thing. They're living in the same country. They will feel the polluted air because they're using oil as fuel. This is something that should not continue. But this is happening everywhere in the world. I say this in Mexico and this should be applied to the whole of the world. In Mexico, we're fighting for all the people to have a good life, even the ones who are harassing us, who are attacking us, who are speaking ill of us. This is for everyone. We want our people to be happy. And anyone is able to build their own growth for happiness. No one should be facing conditions of poverty. And in New York, there are people living in the streets with minus 20 degrees Celsius. No one should be living in the street. The winter in New York is terrible, but they have fuels for heating, but water is frozen. And if you go to the bathroom and you want to flush, it's frozen and there's nothing you can do. Just wait for the next one. Yes, and there's people living in the streets. And President Chavez was giving them fuel, and they have no medical plans, they have no social security. It is incredible to see the most powerful economically country in the world does not have universal health. And this is the result. This is the result. And the numbers are clear. The numbers are clear. The solidarity of Cuba is, of course, something we should always be speaking about. And Cuba is one of the most important 5 education systems in the world. Even this has been stated by the World Bank. This has not been said by the left wing, by the World Bank. And with all the investment of Cuba for the children, well, this is below, of course, than the one of the United States, but the results are wonderful. And in the United States, the results, they're just throwing away money because the people are becoming more and more ignorant. The people now don't have any information. It's ironic because if you see the social networks and the internet, people are becoming dumber instead of developing their knowledge, their education, because they're just watching trash TV. These are anti-values. Yes. And the data of the World Bank is actually a Russian hacking. Because everything comes from Russia. Everything comes from Russia. They say that Trump won because of Russia. Now they say that Russia is going to intervene in the Mexican elections. Because the United States have never intervened in the elections, right? Never, never. With elections, or with the army, or with the economy. So this is what's happening. They intervene everywhere, and they have stolen over half of our territory in Mexico. You are, of course, facing occupation, but we were stolen over half of our territory. They've taken our minerals, they've taken our oil, and everything they have been able to get from our country. If you see the old Mexican map, you will be enraged. Yes, this is terrible. This should be a sin. This should be called occupied territories. And the people of Mexico and of Latin America should be respected. And the people of Mexico are living in their own land. And this maniac is in the White House speaking about the wall. What happened in Mexico after this news of the wall? Well, if we come back to the book that I was showing you before, there was going to be a meeting with Enrique Peña Nieto, the traitor president that Mexico today has. And Trump is still trying to make our president accept that we are going to pay for the wall. And no president of Mexico can do this. This is political suicide. The moment that you say we are paying for the wall, then your political career is done. And Peña, who's willing to sell his nation, well, he is not going to go that far. And Trump will not listen. Trump does not understand because Peña is telling him, give me a way out. I'm your lackey. And Trump says, pay for the wall. So there's no meanings. There's no way to do so. And they're working with Aguirre Garay, who's a great friend. Okay, let's listen to this. I heard about Aguirre Garay, but what's the link between Aguirre Garay and Trump? I don't know if they were together in a university of the United States. Aguirre Garay was educated there. But it's known that he's been 20 times. Aguirre Garay brought Trump to Mexico due to the relationship with his son-in-law, and they've kept this relationship, and they were just creating a new meeting that was not held because he was saying that they were going to pay for the wall, and Peña said no. But there's a leaked recording where Trump calls the president of Mexico, Enrique, and then Peña tells him President Trump. And, of course, I am the president of Mexico, you should call me president. You should call me by my name if we are having a good relationship. If not, you'll just have to listen, because I will do what you do. It's just reciprocity. If I don't call you Donald, you cannot call me by my name. If I call you Donald, you will believe that's the duck, right? Well, this is not about formality. We are an independent sovereign nation. This is not just what I'm saying, this is what you represent. And this is crazy when you take a look at the relationship. It is really dangerous for the whole of the world. Everyone can see this in the United States. Even the conservative and liberal media can see this. And it is terrifying to see. Because if you believe that Trump is elementary and dangerous, well, you will say that it was not enough. What's the title of the book? Fuego y Furia, Fire and Fury. So they say that he is just a beast. Read this, read this. I wanted to show the name of the author. I don't have any business with the book, I just wanted to show you. But where is this taking us? A predictable future? What do you think of the future? What can you predict of the future after what you've spoken? For instance, the relationship with Mexico. I believe that we are going to undergo deep changes in Mexico, and this will open a way for humanity. We have just 5 minutes left. This is everything I can say. Well, the coin has been tossed all around the world, in Mexico and the rest of the world. We speak of fascism, militarization, suicidal destruction of humanity. But humanity will continue to exist, so we're not going to go there. We'll find a way out. I really believe. I trust the people of Mexico, and I trust the rest of the peoples. This is not only rhetoric. This is what I have to say. Of course, there are problems. People are divided. People don't have education. They don't know about politics. And we spoke off the air. If you would ask the people in Latin America who wants to be American, who wants to have the United States citizenship, most of the people will say yes, because they don't have any political idea or ideology. But I am reasonably positive about this. And Vilma, what can you tell me? Well, of course, they are anticipating that the measures that they're imposing for austerity with the different governments in Latin America will somehow lead to the protest of the people. That's why they require militarization and to have militarized police officers as well. But this creates an awakening in that consciousness. We are going through this in Puerto Rico. When people thought that they couldn't even breathe without the United States, after the hurricane, they have realized that there's been different towns that have to create their own energy. Some bridges have been rebuilt by the people themselves. And there's been an empowerment. They did so, yes, they were able to do it. Of course, of course. And it was genius, Walter. You see, a bridge fell. And then someone, all of a sudden, created a giant staircase for the people to climb this bridge and go to the community. And at the same time, they created a line with a basket, a hanging basket, to bring the food and the rest of the items required by the people. And then this community is looking for a way to rebuild the bridge by themselves without the need of help from the government. And this in Puerto Rico is very important, very interesting, right? Yes, because people were already realizing that they were by themselves. And it is clear and obvious that the United States have no interest of creating the 51st state of the United States with Puerto Rico. Statisticians have created all things. They care about the base, they care about the Nen Island to have all weapons there. Yes, they want to continue with the militarization of some islands with the aerial base of Remi and Aguadilla, and this could, of course, be a threat, a very important threat against Venezuela. But at the same time, the United States, when the Republicans meet in the Congress to speak about Puerto Rico, they just candidly say, what we want is for Puerto Rico to be the homecoming of the Caribbean. And what's Hong Kong? Hong Kong is nothing but a haven for trafficking, exploitation, and all the problems in the world can be found in Hong Kong. I visited Hong Kong and it's terrible. It's terrible. Yes, and of course money laundering. You see, after what's happened in Puerto Rico, if you're a billionaire from the United States and you go to Puerto Rico, you buy a house and you say that you will spend 180 days of the year there, and you have your money in a Puerto Rican bank, you don't have to pay taxes. And these are laws that have been approved in Puerto Rico to make us a tax haven. And of course, this clashes with the reality that the Puerto Ricans are living, the ones that had to migrate and break their family, those that no longer have a public school, those with no health care as they had before. And this awakening of the awareness, sooner than later, will bring the people to stand up and demand of the United States. Listen, this relationship is not working. They have expressed this more than 20 times in different ways. But listen, you are either make Puerto Rico the 51st state, or we're going to be sovereign and independent. We believe that the option that the United States will choose will be to provide sovereignty and independence by, of course, creating a neo-colony for their economic interests. But this is a different chapter that we'll have to deal with when it comes up. Well, we hope to do so. Wilma Reveron and Gerardo Fernandez Noroña. It's been a real pleasure having the chance of speaking with you. And please, our audience should be aware of everything we've spoken. I wish the best for the great nation while we're in the Caribbean. We always say this in the program. It's been a real pleasure having you here. The same thing, Walter, same thing, same. Every time you come to this country, you're invited here in order to fight for our ideals. Thank you so much. Please, how was this? Good? Very good. So it may be. Director, the floor is all yours.